yeah, we are recording, and we do have a YouTube channel that's got all of our prior presentations, or many of them. We're in the process of getting them up there. I know COS also has a YouTube channel for its content up there at this point. Now,
Oops.
yeah.
And if people know how to and don't mind doing so, if you could mute your mics.
Yeah.
If you're not talking.
Right. So in the little box that has your picture in it, there should be like a little unmute, mute or unmute button in there, right? So if you're not talking, you can mute your mic. This is great. We're getting all the way through all my notes here without me having to say anything. Okay. So one thing I do want to do, before we go any farther, we had paused our programming last week. We wanted to just give space to discussions about racial justice. And we don't want to just pick up where we left off with our programming. We take our responsibilities as a not-for-profit working in the conservation world really seriously there. We're trying to build a movement that opposes exploitation of resources that has to include exploitation of people. We can't really address environmental issues in a system that's broken. So, we wanted to really give space to those discussions about racial justice. And we have, as Chicago Audubon Society, it's been very important to us to have a commitment to creating a safe and welcoming space for Black birders, but the events of the last few weeks have really deepened our understanding about that, and also our sense of urgency about it. So, we've been thinking a lot about that these days, and I just want to acknowledge that. And I also want to just take a moment of silence for us to, each think about how we can contribute to a more just future, and also in memory of, the victims of police violence, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and many, many others. So if we could just take start off with a minute for that, I would appreciate it. Okay, so thank you for that. So, as I said, we are sort of resuming with our planned programming, but hopefully more mindfully, and hopefully as we go forward, we'll really all see some changes.
Judy, can I say a quick word?
Please.
You and I both know that we had just begun to solidify with Chicago Audubon a quarterly program that we were going to be hosting here at the Green Living Room here in Woodlawn. And Blacks in Green is, as I'll be happy to share about later, is a great lover of the outdoors and stewards of the earth and all that good jazz. And we just really look forward to working with you and with especially with the youth in our community. We'll tell you a little bit about that, and creating the next generation of nature lovers, ecologists, and urban stewards. And thank you for recognizing the great uprising that we're in the midst of. It's a little difficult to tear away from those thoughts and be in your joy in the bosom of nature, but here we are. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Naomi. And yeah, we look forward to a great partnership and glad to be able to kick it off here. As you said, when the coronavirus hit, we were in the middle of planning a lot of activities with Blacks in Green and a number of other community organizations. Chicago Audubon our mission is to connect people with birds and nature. And our vision is that all communities in our region will understand, value, and protect birds, other wildlife, and habitat. And we take that vision very seriously. And we were, about to do a big training program in Washington Park and in South Shore, and we had to cut all that short because of coronavirus. But next spring we will do that. And in the meantime, as you said, we're going to be working on some programming with your group, and we're really excited about that. Okay, so this is our first patch chat. As I said, co-sponsored with Chicago Audubon and Chicago Ornithological Society. You'll hear from Edward later. We're delighted to be talking about Washington Park today, and we've got a lot of great people here. So I think without further ado, we're going to just launch into the program. So our first set of co-sponsors that I want to highlight is the Audubon, the new Audubon chapter at University of Chicago. And Ross E. Natale has done a lot to organize that chapter, and she's on the call. She also made that nice map of that birding map of Washington Park, which hopefully you saw in the materials, and she helped us put together our hotspots. So if you go to Chicago Audubon Society web page, you can find the birding hotspot section, and you can read her description about the park. So I want to just really call her out and thank her. And then we're going to hear from Ryan Fuller. But before we do that, I just want to say one more thing, which is that, if you're not familiar with Zoom, like somewhere you're going to see something that says speaker view or some view. If you play around with those views, you can get the view you want. So, you might have a big grid and you might be seeing a whole bunch of people. If you want to, you can consolidate that down to one. And then on the bottom, there's a chat box, and you should click on that and open that up. And then you can ask questions at any time. Just put those questions in the chat box. So with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Ryan, who is a PhD student at the University of Chicago and an active birder and member of the chapter down there, the Audubon chapter.
Okay, thanks, Judy, and thanks for everybody for being here. I don't know how I got selected for this, but somehow I did. So there are a lot of birders in our group that are much more qualified to do this than me, but we should have a fun time talking about this. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully PowerPoint slides will pop up for you, so if someone could give a verbal ooh, I pushed the wrong button. Give me a second. I pushed the other slideshow play. Is that one showing presenter screen or the full slideshow?
Share the presenter view.
Sorry, say that again.
Oh, you just share the presenter view.
It just has a presenter view? Okay. It worked just a second ago, and now it's... Okay, is that better?
No, you want to press share screen again?
Okay, yeah, I'll try.
It worked.
There. Okay.
Is it presenter view or is it?
No, it's your screen.
Okay, give me 1 second. This is the plight of trying to run a double screen format with Zoom. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
I think you can just share the normal screen and then right click to get the presenter view.
But that's the thing, is I don't want the presenter view. Okay, is that better?
That's working.
Okay, I'm running a 2-screen format for my work from home, so sometimes it doesn't want to cooperate. Again, thanks for being here. As Judy mentioned, I'm Ryan Fuller. I'm a 4th-year PhD student at the University of Chicago and a member of the University of Chicago Audubon student chapter. And this first patch chat is to highlight Washington Park, or as we call it in our group, WAPA for the birding code name, banding code name. So this is a picture here from one of the inner lagoons off of the bridge looking west during a sunset during like mid-May, I believe, on one of my birding adventures there. But I first wanted to kind of give a land acknowledgement statement for this. So it's acknowledging the ground on which we stand, not only for Washington Park, but in the Hyde Park area, was once, the stewards of the land were indigenous peoples. And we're trying to strive to address that history. So the Sioux, the Miami, the Potawatomi, Peoria, and the Kickapoo tribes once were stewards of this land. I just wanted to acknowledge their presence here for the history and also present and future work in the area. So the tool of our trade, or at least my trade as a birder, I'm sure some people, a lot of people still use the paper and pen while they're out walking, but I very much use my cell phone and eBird. So this is what the park bird species count is up to as of today. And in the fall of 2016, when I had never birded before, Washington Park was the first place that I ever used a pair of binoculars to look at a bird in any way where I was trying to categorize a species. And it was about at 120 species with various amounts of coverage based on months of the year. So mostly, as you can imagine, in Chicago, if you're not from Chicago, it's a huge migratory corridor and probably one of the best places to meet and run into other birders. People here are extremely adamant about their birding, and you can go all over the city and meet all people from different walks of life. But for me personally, 68 of my 230 lifers in Cook County in particular have come from Washington Park. So spent quite a bit of time in the park myself. And as far as this year goes, I'm just going to brag a little bit about Washington Park to try to entice you to come down here in the south side of Chicago, is a look at our 2020 patch. So you can break down eBird into different categories of, of how you want to look at the data. But Cook County, with the recent COVID-19 shutdown, has shut down like our most popular hotspot, which is arguably Montrose Beach, and is usually #1. But if you look at the south side of Chicago for the current year in Cook, Washington Park is #1. We almost hit 200 species for the year in terms of migrants and overall birds that are now also breeding in the park, and took over the #1 spot in Cook County. And lo and behold, #2 is Jackson Park, which is actually closer to my house here in Hyde Park and about maybe half a mile to a quarter mile away at the Museum of Science and Industry. So that just kind of highlights how great the birding is on the south side of Chicago. So if you don't come down here very often, I hope that you do. And if you kind of zoom out a little bit more, this has changed a little bit, but if you look at the whole of Illinois, we're competing with other hotspots that have beachfront. So we're missing all sorts of different shorebirds. Pelicans, for example, are things that you usually don't ever see on the south side of Chicago. We had some flyovers, but they don't usually come in and stay in the parks. We still managed to come inside of the top 5 with that 193. For a long time, for a couple of weeks in May, we were the #1 birding spot in Illinois, or at least top 2. So that's really, really exciting. And just, I think the number of checklists have increased mightily over the last couple of months. Of more people have traveled down to come see our park. To see this patch. And also the UChicago Audubon eBird profile, which we started, reported 112 species in a single birding trek on May 15th, 2020. So that's pretty impressive for an inner city park to grab 112 species on a single morning. That was a lot of fun. And so some of the things that have been coming out of this, we have a patch website now that was created by Judy Chesky and Judy Pollock that you can go and look at now, and has a great highlight of the park. And Rossi filled in a bunch of information about how long it will take you to bird there, examples, so you can prepare for a day of coming to walk in our park. And Rossi made this beautiful map of all the different locations. And I'm just, during this presentation, I just want to walk through some of those a little bit closer and highlight some of the breeding birds that stay here for the summer, but also some of the magnificent migrants that we saw this spring. And also Rossi and Jiani Zhu that created a blog post for Nature Loves Chicago that you can also find. And I think we can post this presentation later if you'd like to read both of those. They're fantastic, and they kind of highlight closer in narrative format of what you can see in the park and the adventures that we've had from the student perspective. So this is a Google view of what our park looks like. It's rather large, characterized by a bunch of softball fields and kind of open soccer and football fields in the north. There's an arboretum on the west side, and then we have a rather large lagoon area where we do our walks. And I've kind of broken down, using Rossi's map as inspiration, some of the polygons that we frequent or traffic more on our transects. I do have to highlight that, like, this whole entire eastern edge, and I'm forgetting the road now, forgive me, but 55th Street comes in right here, and you can park freely on this eastern side of the park, and also there's a parking lot over at the public pool. On the weekdays, the university is usually, or the medical, the hospital here usually takes up a lot of the parking, so plan accordingly. But so the first thing I'd like to highlight are the ball fields. And usually we would walk this and it just kind of went by the wayside. But this spring we kind of managed to push out during the heavier rains, and we were just shocked by some of the fallout that came from some of these things. So we had like first ever sightings of short-billed dowager here. Great photos by another amazing birder in our group, Jacob Drucker. We've managed to find Bonaparte's gulls on the lawn, and also greater and lesser yellowlegs, as well as things like sandhill cranes, plovers, amazing short-eared owl that we had in April. And then the trees that line the entire perimeter, let me actually highlight this. The outer edge of the perimeter of this ball field is lined by really tall kind of old trees that are fantastic for warblers. So we call it the warbler highways in our group. So that's a great overview of the ball fields. And this is kind of what the fallouts on heavy rain days in the spring look like on the ball fields, but you get fluttles, as we call them, and that kind of entices the shorebirds and other things to come out of the sky on the rainy days. So it's kind of neat. And the other part that we've recently started exploring is the arboretum. So there's a great stand of really old trees here that attract things like eastern bluebird. We're pretty sure that we have a breeding pair there right now. We've also seen things like pine warbler, chipping sparrows. Most likely this is where our breeding pair of white-breasted nuthatch spends most of the summer and other times of the year when you can't find them in the southern lagoons. And other things like yellow-bellied sapsuckers and other woodpeckers. And Wei Lu will be talking about some of his magnificent photos and birding experiences that he's captured this year. We've aptly named this one kind of the Bermuda Triangle because it sits in this triangle of 3 different large public streets, but we've managed to pull like cuckoos, yellow-billed cuckoos and black-billed cuckoos out of here. We had a hooded warbler, some ovenbirds, and all the thrushes that abound in this area, as well as territorial red-winged blackbirds, etc. From that area, which is kind of surprising since it kind of sits in the middle of a high traffic area. As you come farther down into the lagoon, I think this is where a lot of people who are attracted to the park typically go first, are the concrete walking paths and dirt trails that circle these inner and outer lagoons. But we have a marsh bridge that has some cattail habitat here where we pulled out soras, marsh wrens, gray catbirds, swamp sparrows, mourning warblers, eastern towhees, coots, blue-winged teals. There's a lot of life going on in this very small patch of otherwise very well manicured grass. So yeah, I push you to maybe start your walks here if you don't want to do the full ball field walk in the Arboretum as well. On the southwest perimeter, this is probably one of the favorite spots for the local student chapter to go because we've just pulled some magnificent birds from this area that we never thought would have been there. But, you know, Prothonotary warbler was seen multiple times this spring, as well as a surprising Henslow sparrow that used a very small patch of hard to call it grass prairie on the very edge of that corner to stake out for a while. It's probably a 5 to 10 foot patch of grass, but it was an amazing bird to see. So the western edge is a great place to go, as well as finding flickers, red-headed woodpeckers, an abundance of vireos, and American woodcock. And then finally, we have the western forest, or what we call the warbler woods. We managed to pull out probably one of the rock stars of the spring was a cerulean warbler, which Jacob Drucker captured some magnificent photos here, feeding along the edge. And then we also managed to get a least bittern here out of the middle of the lagoon as well. And that made for quite a bit of popularity amongst birding chats and other underground outlets where people talk about birds they need to see. And then another highlight of the spring, and one of the last stories I have, is the red-tailed hawk nest. So we've been watching the red-tailed hawks for most of March and into April. And then one day we saw them carrying nesting material. And this photo is from just about a week and a half ago, where the chicks have started to pop out on the edge of the nest begging for food, and they're starting to get some of their adult plumage. And I haven't been back to watch them recently, but that's really been a joy in the park. And I can't really dig up any other historical records of red-tailed hawks. So if anybody has any stories about that, we'd be really interested to know. So I'd like to acknowledge, in particularly Rossi, for really spearheading the UChicago Audubon creation over the last, I would say, 2 years or so. She's really done a lot of the groundwork to get this chapter up and running. And also Chicago Audubon Society and the COS for all of for sponsoring walks and helping us get these patch chats started. And then personally for me, like my birding mentors, Jacob Cooper, I wouldn't be birding without him, and I wouldn't be here talking about you without him. And Jacob Drucker over the last year has also been really helpful with a lot of bird ID in the field and just great camaraderie for mornings in the field, and also the Field Museum Bird Division. And with that, there's some mammals also in the park, but thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. That was a great overview. Wonderful. Since we're a little behind, we're just going to go straight to introducing Naomi Davis. She's the founder and director of Blacks and Green, which is a really great organization which has opened up this new green living room just pretty close to Washington Park, just a little bit south. And she's going to share with us some of her sustainability and nature focus in the neighborhood. So welcome and thank you, Naomi.
Yes, thank you so much, Judy, and the rest of the gang here. I am just really excited to be saying hello to folks from the Green Living Room garden, where we have launched our backyard nursery, landscaping service, garden supply, and gift cafe here in Woodlawn. The idea behind Blacks and Green was always that we were going to live at the intersection of the environment and the economy. And so it's no surprise to anyone who's been following us that we would find so many ways to combine those two passions and commitments. We are looking at always how to be stewards of our environment with our neighbors, outreach and education. We have partnerships with Morton Arboretum, Open Lands, with the Chicago Park District. And inside of our organization, we have a chief gardening officer who has been a lifelong botanist or a lover of the outdoors since he was a little boy in the St. Louis Botanic Gardens and drawing birds, and now he's here at the foot of Washington Park working with us, drawing birds literally and figuratively to the signature garden we call the Great Migration Garden, located at 60th and St. Lawrence, just at the foot of Washington Park. And so we have inside of our commitment to bring the love of the outdoors to the community, we have created a a pathway to becoming America's first African American community certified arboretum. We've planted 300 and more trees. We've got a tree planting scheduled for next month here at one of our new gardens that we're installing, the Mamie Till Forgiveness Garden. Check out our website at blacksandgreen.org for the calendar information, and come on out and plant some trees with us. We are at the Green Living Room and at that signature garden that I mentioned to you on 60th and St. Lawrence, have installed pollinator gardens. And in the sense of really working throughout our neighborhood to create pollination spaces, we're proud to be able to say that we are introducing our young people as well. We have a brand new youth department that we're launching, and we have a program called the DuSable Wilderness Weekend, where we're going to be introducing junior high school and elementary school kids to the wonders of Washington Park. So we'll be doing, birding, orienteering, canoeing, archery, foraging, and camping in the parks starting this summer. The need for this is great. Those of you who know the neighborhood know that we have an elementary school located right on the boundaries of Washington Park at 60th and Champlain. And sadly, you rarely see our kids venturing into the park for all of the wonderful adventures that they can find there. So we're inviting you to come and join us. We'll be partnering, of course, with Chicago Audubon in a series. Those of you who weren't online with us when we first started out may not have heard our message, but we have a quarterly program that we were just in the middle of cultivating, right, Judy? When COVID hit, and we literally had just scheduled our first program, and had to deschedule it. But the commitment is there that number one, we understand, as many of you might, that birding is not the province or domain of the white community, but the Black community has a very robust and a passion for birds, and we want to make sure that we're serving that passion. We have the Green Living Room where we can have streaming, live streaming of outdoor activity, but where we will also be headquartering and heading out. We're located at 6431-33 South Cottage Grove. And so look for meetups that we'll be having there. We are literally just a stone's throw from the Midway Pleasance, Washington Park, and Jackson Park. And so we look forward to you joining us and mixing it up in ways that probably needs to happen a lot more. Wouldn't you say, Judy? Oh, you're muted.
Yes.
Did you have any other? Well, I wanted to say one specific thing about our garden program. Some of you know that where we're located is a neighborhood called West Woodlawn, which is Chicago's first Black middle class neighborhood, and the place where what we call the Great Migration strivers came up south for freedom and economic opportunity and landed here starting in the early 1900s. The Great Migration officially started 1916, and when we hit the migration centennial in 2016, we had launched an initiative called the 16 Great Migration Gardens of West Woodlawn. And so, among other things, we're working with Preservation Chicago and the City of Chicago to install gardens throughout. And this means that we are going to be actively cultivating our birding spaces as we go. And so you'll see a kind of flourishing in our neighborhood that won't be typical until others begin to adopt their sustainable square mile approaches and what we call GOD, or garden-oriented development. And we, lastly, I'll say that we have an architectural moment that we're experiencing here with the cultivation of House as Garden by the internationally renowned architect Michael Sorkin, who recently passed from COVID. And when we say House as Garden, we really do mean to underscore our commitment to bringing human life in synchronicity and harmony with the natural world. And we hope that you'll come visit us as we're having our first garden stroll on either August 22nd or September 19th. But we'll get the news out to you, because as we're strolling our gardens, we'll also be birding with you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Naomi. And yeah, those opportunities sound so great. We'll really look forward to getting the word out about those to people. And thanks for sharing all the fantastic work you're doing, and thanks for doing it. Okay, next we're going to do a little bird ID. And we're going to start with Wei Lu from the University of Chicago. Audubon is going to share a few pictures with us, and then we're going to hear from two other birders with who also have pictures they've taken in the park.
Great. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Let me share the screen. Is it changing? Is it showing okay, or?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, yeah, great, thank you. So yeah, I'm glad to be here and share with you several photos I took in Washington Park and the related tips. And I'm sure I'm not the most qualified person to be here and talk about these photos. So I feel honored to be here and talk about some stories and related birding ID tips. So the first one I want to share is red-bellied woodpecker. So red-bellied woodpecker is a medium-sized woodpecker with a black and white checked pattern on its back, and both female and male have this red nap, and in males you can see the red nap extend from nap to crown. So, and the photo show here is a male red-bellied woodpecker. So why I choose this one? So first, it's fairly common and it breeds in Washington Park. So it nests in the cavity inside the tree. And one tip for birding, for finding this woodpecker, is really to pay attention to its iconic call. So ever since I learned and recognized the call, I can almost always find it every time I went to Washington Park. So here I would just play a short portion of it. Yeah, this is the really iconic call of this red-bellied woodpecker. And finding birds by sound also applies to many other birds. And the next photo I want to share is the photo also taken in Washington Park. So it's the great horned owl. So great horned owl is the largest owl in North America. It's easy to recognize by its really huge size and also its long ear-like tufts. But during daytime, it mainly roosts in trees without making any noise, or it's quiet most of the time, which makes it really hard to find during the daytime. However, we can pay attention to the behavior of American crows, which can help you find owls and many other predators such as red-tailed hawk and etc. And I remember one day when I was about to leave the park and I heard a group of cawing American crows. And when I walked closer, I saw two crows were chasing a red-tailed hawk. And at the beginning, I thought, that's it. So I planned to leave. But then I noticed that the rest still kept cawing in the tree. And after I following the orientation of all the crows in the tree, and finally I found the great horned owl. And this photo was also show another time I saw crows mobbing an owl. You can see here the The black part is the American crow. The third to share is one-meeting warbler. One-meeting warbler is a drab warbler, but the facial pattern is quite unique. You can see the black crown stripe and the stripes through the eyes. So actually, it's a rare visitor for Washington Park. But here I also want to share some more general birding tips. Is that really learn the behavior of our target species can help us find the birds. So unlike many other warblers, the one-meeting warblers forage the understory near the ground. And here you can see that occasionally it will also land it on the ground. And when it was first spotted in Washington Park, I went to the spot immediately after I got a message. As I believe it's also around the middle of May, so it's the peak migration day. But it was gone. So I decided to come back to the park later that afternoon and search another patch with similarly dense understory and finally found the bird. So I think, yeah, really learn about the behavior of your target species can help you find the bird. And lastly, I would like to, the last birding tip I want to share is look out for flyovers, which might give you a big surprise sometimes. So the photo shown here is the non-breeding Smith's longspur. You can notice the wide upper wing patch. It's quite iconic. And so normally these Smith's longspur breed in tundra, and during migration season, you can also find them in Chicago region. And when I took this photo, I didn't realize that it was not that common for Hyde Park. And then I checked the eBird checklist, and it seems that the last time it was seen in Hyde Park region was in 1972. And also I find that the story behind this photo is also quite interesting. So at that time, I was trying really hard to find American pipit, which I believe most of you have seen that before. And other birders told me that they mostly find it in ball field early in the morning. So I choose one morning with really good migration intensity predicted by birdcast, which I also believe that everyone should look at birdcast. I think it's really useful for, especially in the migration season. So it's based on weather data and previous birding data, and then it can predict the migration intensity. And anyway, when I arrived, I saw several sparrow-like birds flying over, and I saw, oh, it might be the pipits. So finally, I can get a lifer for me. And among all the individuals that flew over, I was only able to get photos of one individual. And I look at the photo, to my surprise, it was not a pipit at all. Instead, it looks really similar to Smith's longspur that I saw in the Cook County Rare Bird Alert several days ago. And also another part, and later on, I also realized that I have seen American pipit before. They're actually quite common wintering birds in Beijing. But at the beginning, I saw American pipits, just as the name suggested, it would be localized to North America. And I think that's it. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much. That was really interesting, Wei. Those were some great pictures. Now we're going to see a photo from Simon Tolsman, who is a student, I believe, at Amundsen. And I'm going to bring the picture up, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about this photo that he took at Washington Park. Okay. There we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simon. I'm a ninth grader at Amundsen High School. I got into birding maybe about 4 years ago now, about 5 years ago. And I have not stopped. I've just soaked up everything I can. And when COVID-19 kind of popped up and they closed the entirety of the lakefront, I thought it was just going to be really bad because we didn't have Montrose. And Montrose is like the best place to go birding in Illinois, really, in the spring. But I found my way around it, and I actually had a record-breaking spring for myself. And one of the birds I saw the most of was the rose-breasted grosbeak. That's a picture that I took on the south side of the lagoon at Washington Park. It's an adult male. You might recognize them. You might have heard them before. They have a very high-pitched, squeaky pip call. And then their song is similar to a robin song, but it has a couple of different notes. yeah, that I just saw, and I saw more rose-breasted grosbeaks this spring than I've ever seen before. I counted at least 5 flying over my house every day that there was good winds coming out of the south. Whenever I get up early and do morning flight counts. So yeah, it's a bird that you can still see around Chicago now. And you should be able to see them slightly into the fall, but in the spring, it's always the best time to see lots and lots of the male rose-breasted grosbeaks.
Thanks, Simon. And now we're going to hear from another local birder who has who birds Washington Park, and that is Julie Rand.
Hi, everyone. I am kind of a new birder, but it's something I really enjoy. And because Montrose was closed this year, my husband and I ventured down to Washington Park and fell in love and really enjoyed it. The bird that I want to talk about is called a wood duck. And one of the reasons I picked this bird is because it's, when you're a beginning birder, it's such a treat to see a nice large bird that you can actually see instead of trying to, figure out what that tiny little brown sparrow is or whatever. So I'm going to share a picture I took of a wood duck on the South Lagoon. So this is a male wood duck, and you can see they're super colorful. They have this crest and a red eye. I'd say they're a little bit smaller than a mallard duck, but they're so beautiful and colorful, and I still get a charge out of seeing them. One of the things that's cool about this duck is that it's called a wood duck because it doesn't have webbed feet like most ducks. It has claws, and they nest in trees. And in some places, like in Labaw Woods near where I live, they put up nesting boxes for the wood duck. And they're a little bit shy, but if you look towards the edges of bodies of water, they like marshes and ponds. At Washington Park, we saw them by the Marsh Bridge, and also we saw lots of pairs in the southwestern part of the lagoon. So it's a really beautiful bird, and you might even be able to spot it with your naked eye without binoculars. And I do have one other, just a moment. I don't have a good picture of the female. Hang on, I'm having a problem. Just a minute. Sorry, guys. Just a minute. But the female is really, really an interesting looking duck. And if I can get this to work, I'll show you a picture that I did take from eBird of the female wood duck. Whoops, birds. Sorry, guys. And she's very different than the male, but I think she's also beautiful. And with the white around her eye, I always think of her as like the duck Nefertiti. One other thing that's cool about the wood duck is that they do spend spring and all summer here, and they breed here. So that's one of the nice things about it. They're around a long time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Edward. I was afraid this would happen. We were going to have all this time to chat. But anyway, Edward is going to just talk a little bit about COS, and then we're going to have time to chat about Washington Park.
Well, I don't have to talk much. If people have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. We'd love to hear you guys. Any questions about Washington Park or that general vicinity, burning that area, or what's going on there, we'd love to hear them. If you weren't here for the beginning introduction, my name is Edward. I'm president of Chicago Ornithological Society. We're super stoked to be obviously partners with Audubon in this program, and hopefully will be many more in an awesome series. It's kind of nutty to think that this whole thing just started a couple months ago with Judy and I on a phone call. I think we titled it Bad Hair Day phone call. That was right as quarantine started, and we really just letting the whole hair care thing go to the wayside. But just trying to figure out how do we kind of keep that whole birding spirit alive that we, often really love to share about where are the best places to go, what are the cool things that you saw. Every time that you pass somebody on a trail during a normal walk, what's usually the first thing that happens? You see anything good? So we wanted to try to keep that spirit alive, and I'm really thrilled that it's actually finally coming together with this program. So I hope you guys are at least getting some of that vibe here, being able to reach out to your fellow birders. I don't have to talk much about COS other than we're awesome as well, just like Audubon. We obviously love to partner on a lot of these different programs because our missions overlap greatly. And I'm really thrilled that we're in a place right now where we can kind of share our resources and our partners and partner on all of these projects to ultimately help you guys, the birders, get out there and enjoy these spaces and help advocate for their care and conservation and preservation. So, and yes, while Montrose is indeed open once again, for anybody who's any lingering questions, I definitely suggest that while, go get your birds in Montrose when you can. Definitely keep, I think it's been pretty shown thoroughly here that Washington Park is a serious contender for its money. And I think the rest of the series will also show that there's a lot of other fantastic places you can go to really get your birding bang for your buck. So hope you guys stick with us and stick with Washington Park and some of these areas. So are there any questions coming in the chat here? Looks like we got a couple. Okay, Ryan Wilson, is there a good map of the park with the local place names of the park areas? Does anybody here want to take that?
So I can say Chicago Audubon Society has we have a section where we have birding hotspots, and we have a page dedicated to Washington Park. So that page talks about birds you can see there and places, and it's got that map of Rossi's that we saw earlier. So that's one. I'll put the link in.
There's one note from Ryan.
Yeah, I just dropped it in the chat.
Okay, great.
Awesome, there it is.
Had it ready to go just in case anybody had questions.
We got another one from Jill here. How comfortable do the regular WAPA birders, I love that acronym, going to the fenced area on Bynum Island? When I was there a couple weeks ago, at least one birder was inside, but the way in and out was not clear.
It's Naomi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I also live at the foot of Washington Park, and for the last 8 years, most of that time have had a dog who enjoyed the outdoors as much as I did. So I've covered every foot of that park, including all of the nooks and crannies of Bynum, all the ways in, the ways out, and the ways in between. So it has changed over the years, and I feel comfortable moving through it, or at least I did when I had my dog. I don't know how comfortable I would feel now because, there are some people who live there, who live on the island. And so I would say if you are moving in a group, and most of the time it is locked up, but you can get through the holes if you want to. But I wouldn't go in alone. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that answers that question. And hopefully that also answers Pam's question here too, wondering if there is a way to get onto Bynum Island, or maybe birding field trips can go. Sounds like, yeah, through the holes in the fence. That's the way in. Oh, we got a good question here. So Woody, would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself and actually ask your question in person?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I just thought of this, but when I've been there a couple times, there's like that little clump of grassland, near the edge of the lagoon. And then across from that, there's like a little island of trees. And, my question is anyone trying to expand those native planting areas or know what's involved in that process? Montrose started a lot smaller than it is today. and a lot of people put a lot of work into that. So, you know, there's potential there.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Anybody know the answer to that?
I can take that one too. So we were going to have a little section on that today, but unfortunately, the poor person who was going to do it was not able to make it. But I would like to get the answer to that question, because I kind of feel like we advertised that that would be a part of these, and maybe we can send that to all the participants. Interestingly, the woman who used to be the steward signed up for this, and I emailed her and I said, you know, you want to talk about it, but she actually couldn't make it. So I can also get some information from her, and we've got everybody's email, so we can send you the answer. But I mean, the one thing I will say is that, man, it looks spectacular there. The landscaping, you know, it's fabulous, and I think the birds really use it. So I think the Park District just did a great job with it.
Yeah, and I want to add, also, it's Naomi again. Just again, south of the park at our Great Migration Garden, we have a prairie. Part of our Great Migration Garden there is a prairie garden, and we would love to participate with anyone who wants to undertake, you know, sort of a guerrilla gardening activity. I don't know what you would call it. We do work closely with Chicago Park District, but if there are ways that we can facilitate or otherwise be a part of a prairie planting there, we would absolutely love that.
Looks like Ryan, you got a question. You want to ask that one directly to the group?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad that there were a couple of things brought up. I think it would be, this is something that I thought of too. Like I'm gonna have like 3 different points on this one. So last May we had massive rains in Chicago, if anybody remembers, and I actually wasn't here in the month of May, but you know, the park flooded for weeks on end, and they were unable to mow the grasses. And over that period of time, you saw kind of the prairie-like, you know, historical kind of biome that used to inhabit, you know, this part of the landscape from the post-glacier period, etc. And the grass was like 5 feet tall, and you had like spring ephemeral flowers popping up in the field on the southern part of the park in the lagoons. And that has always led me to wonder, like, what kind of native plant or, you know, habitat restoration could be implemented into that part of the park with walking trails and whatnot. So I guess that was a great question from Woody on that. And I was, you know, curious if anybody has ever had any plans for doing any of that type of habitat restoration in the park. And then, yeah, the second thing I guess I had was the potential for purple martin nesting boxes in Jackson, like they have in Jackson Park. So if you've been to Jackson Park, they have a set of 3 nesting boxes. We were just there yesterday morning, and there's probably 35 or 40 purple martins flying around the Museum of Science and Industry at any time during the day. And I just dropped a link in the chat about that Jacob Cooper sent me earlier today about the only pre-1990 checklist on, it's a historical checklist. So there was Dr. Wallace Craig, who lived from 1876 to 1954, submitted a checklist, or at least he had a written note of 800 purple martins circling Washington Park. And he gives a pretty fantastic account of what that experience was like. And obviously we don't have 800 purple martins flying around South Chicago right now, but
we have that anywhere.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's kind of incredible. So, you know, over 100 years ago, we had flocks, and he estimates that there were probably more than 1,000, but that was his general count, was 800. So I guess that was my question, is like, are there ways that we can try to bring this back to Washington Park, you know, both with the planting of native plants, as well as helping out with these gardens with Naomi, and also trying to entice, you know, other things like breeding birds like dick thistles and purple martins, because now you struggle to even get a purple martin at Washington Park. I think we had 1 flyover the entire spring, so we were so elated when we finally got 1 purple martin for the park. And it's kind of sad to think that 100 years ago there were close to 1,000 birds breeding somewhere in Hyde Park. So that's about all I have. I guess I had 2 points, not 3. But.
Yeah. So if you have any more questions to put in here, but I think the last question I see here is a really awesome one to potentially end on. Adam Shaw was asking, are there any organized walks, tours, etc., upcoming for beginning birders? Great question. So I can at least speak for Chicago Ornithological, and I think to a certain extent, at least Audubon as well. Obviously, all of our trips have been canceled as of recently. We went and made a big joint statement at the beginning of quarantine saying that we were going to be closed for a while for everybody's health. With the county and state and city opening up now, I imagine everybody's kind of putting together a new summer fall list. I know for our part, we are working on that. And I can at least say, yes, COS will be leading walks to Washington Park. Can't give you any dates yet, but we usually lead at least bare minimum twice a year. But Audubon and UChicago Audubon, I'm sure you guys have some stuff planned as well.
And don't forget Blacks in Green, because we are dedicated to the idea of bringing more of our neighbors outside into to the great bosom of Mom Nature, and look forward to working with Chicago Audubon, Ornithological, the whole passel of you.
So one thing I will say is that, you know, both Chicago Ornithological and Chicago Audubon, and as far as I know, Blacks and Green have mailing lists. So you can go on our websites and sign up for our mailing lists. And then, you know, you'll get notices. Where our situation is very similar to Edward's in that we're talking this through right now, how we're going to open back up. So, you know, fairly soon we'll be announcing some things. So you should be able to look on our website and sign up for our mailing list or join. You know, they're all great organizations. Okay, I am going to, I think, wrap up because it is 7:02. Now, I will say that
Sorry, can I add one more thing to the bird walks? Sorry.
Yeah.
I actually inherited a Facebook Washington Park Birdwalk site from Mary Nell Murphy, who some people might know that name, who I think lives in Indiana now, but we ran into them on one of their biannual bird walks while we were birding in the park, and she got in touch with us to see if we wanted to run the Facebook page. So we also pair very closely with the Chicago Ornithological Society on getting the word out about these talks. So if you're interested in what's going on in Washington Park in particular, I've kind of started to liven up that page a little bit more and getting it started. So please follow us at the Chicago Audubon Facebook page and also the Washington Park Bird Walks for those type of information.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so I think mission accomplished. We had a lot of great people. You know, I think people met each other and were able to get together on the topic of Washington Park. As I said, we'll send around a survey afterwards because we want to figure out what you liked about this, what you didn't like, what we need to do more of, et cetera, so that we can do a better job of these in the future. I do have some bird quizzes, so if you want to stick around after, I'll stay on and do the bird quizzes, but I am going to officially sign off. I will say that we've got more programs coming up. On Tuesday, we've got a great one about waterfowl in the Cook County Forest Preserves. And then next Sunday, Chicago Ornithological has another one of these because we sort of got off. And that one's going to be about Humboldt Park. The next one that Chicago Audubon does will be at the end of the month about Camp Pine. So we intend to do 2 of these patch chats a month where you can go out and visit on your own. We'll give you a little guidance and then we'll get together by Zoom to talk. Do you have anything, Edward, to add to future programs that are coming up? Or
I mean, that's the big one. Obviously, we want you all to come to the patch chats. That's our big kind of flagship partnership here. We also have a number of virtual programs called Birds and Bites, which is our COS series that Audubon also supports. That schedule was also kind of thrown out of whack, so they're not currently posted on our website, but you expect to see a series of new dates for those coming up sometime this week.
Okay. Okay, great. So like I said, if you want to sign off now, you can sign off, but I am going to do like about 5 minutes of bird song quizzes. So if you would like to stick around and quiz yourself, now would be the time. I'm going to get those up. And I got 7 little quizzes here that I took at Washington Park, which was a beautiful, beautiful day. And I'm going to share these. So what you should do is in the chat, write down what birds you hear. Okay, share screen. And here we go. Okay. 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 So. Oh. Okay. All right. I see cowbird. I think. Okay. Okay. Good. Let me see. So we had mallard. There was cowbird. There was robin and indigo bunting in that one. I think. Yeah, those were the 4 that I heard. Okay. Let's do like 2 more. Okay, so for that one, yeah, what I got was a red-bellied woodpecker, indigo bunting. Okay, the warbler that was really hard to figure out was a Wilson's warbler. I spent a lot of time looking for that bird and finally found it. It's this very like indeterminate sounding warbler song. There was a gnatcatcher in there, red-winged blackbird, warbling vireo, that horrible starling baby call, and robin. And let's do one more. And then we can quit. Let's see. Let's try this one. Okay, so that one, let's see, for that, yeah, The two key ones were warbling vireo and red-eyed vireo, right? The warbling vireo was that very flat one, and then the red-eyed vireo was a very flat one, and the warbling vireo was I think if you were listening really closely to that one, you also would have heard also red-winged blackbirds and more of those starlings. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for playing. And thanks everybody so much for doing this. This is really great.
We're all winners here today.
We're all winners. Yes.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great evening.
Yeah.
Thank you all for showing up. And thanks for organizing.
Thanks for presenting.